At least 3 U.S. homes have recently sold for more than $1 million over asking price. It's the latest sign the housing market has gone completely off the rails. It is the latest sign that our economy is on the verge of imploding. And it is the latest sign that, my friends, the Great Reset is very real. It's happening right now. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. Well, I don't think people right now will be all that happy, but millennials are used to having nothing. You look at the boomers and their share of wealth ownership, and they're doing great. You look at Gen X, it goes down, and millennials even worse. Because you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So it's no surprise many millennials are socialists and communists. They don't own anything anyway. Their mentality is take it from the boomers, I guess. Got to go somewhere. These 3 houses that sold for $1 million over asking price. This is big news. What's happening is that these major investment firms and ultra wealthy investors are buying up everything. Why? Well, there's going to be a change in the dynamic. You will be a serf. You will own nothing and you will be happy. What's happening is companies, through a variety of means, just wealthy interests and the policies that shape the nation, there's a great opportunity in buying up these houses and creating a permanent landlord class, or I should say an oligarchy, a permanent serf class. You will be born into poverty. You will never be able to buy one of these houses. Why? They'll never be for sale. The new ones that pop up, you won't be able to afford. You will own nothing and you will be happy. They want you to eat the bugs. That we know. It's all over the media. And they want you to live in the pods. Now, for me, if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I got no problem with either. But in these big cities, you got to check out New York and see how they do apartments. They've taken these houses, right? And because of the way they were shaped, they created what's called railroad apartments. What does that mean? It means somebody is going to be sleeping in the hallway. Railroad apartments are when you walk in the front of the apartment and there's a room. Then you walk through into the bedroom and there's a door to another bedroom. It's one of the worst things imaginable, but that's how young people and people in New York live. Railroad apartments. So what happens? The housing market is just the latest sign of the tumult the economy is going through. And what this means for you, we'll break it all down. But a big factor here is that as raw materials become scarce, as the labor shortage gets worse, the cost of houses is going to go up. And then everyone will just rent. And in the next 5 to 10 years, you will not own anything. And like the World Economic Forum said, you will be happy. Yeah, well, happiness is relative, I suppose. Someone who's born if you were born in the 1400s and you lived the way they did, you'd be happy too. But if you grew up now in all this luxury and got transported back in time to the 1400s, you would be miserable. No air conditioning. What do? No internet. Mostly just working all day. Oof. Technology is a wonderful thing. But this is what they're betting on. They're betting that if they take away your homes, they take away your jobs, they take away your resources, they slowly take away your ability to own and produce, eventually you'll just accept it. So you look at the shortage of raw materials and people just can't buy things. You look at the shortage of beef. Now we know that the climate change people have said, you got to stop eating beef. Beef's bad for the environment, they say. All right. All those farting cows, I guess, and that methane, and the water required for growing beef. Now, a lot of people have pointed out there's regenerative beef farming and there's sustainable practices. Of course, there always are. There's always something we can do. But you look at these climate change activists saying don't eat beef, right? Simply put, all of a sudden there's a beef shortage. All of a sudden there's a chicken shortage. Now they want to do lab-grown meat, and the media says, eat the cicadas, just eat the bugs. Bro, the cicadas are gone almost already. I went outside, and where I live, we're like on the outskirts of this giant swarm. The cicadas are now very small, and they're really quiet. I think the robust and healthier cicadas have left this world, have departed already, and now we're getting the weaker of the batch, and we're on the way out. You can't just eat cicadas or grubs or snails or from the dirt. You can't do that. But that's where we're headed. So I bring up this story first. 3 homes selling for more than $1 million. It's the most egregious indication. You put up a house. So I'll tell you what's going on, right? So we're expanding the business. We're expanding, we're legit going to expand massive, man. This is going to be fantastic. You guys over at timcast.com, the members, have made this possible, and it is incredible. And from this, we are looking at setting up a new facility, which is going to be administrative, and it's going to be very much just like a normal office. Because, we have the compound, the studio, and it's, more shenanigans and everything. But now we got to get serious. We're going to do real distribution. We got to hire journalists. We got to commission people. So we need a standard office space. I'm looking at these properties. I call the agent. I'm like, this one looks good. I see it just popped up on the market. And he goes, let me call him up. I get a call a few minutes later. That's gone. I'm like, how is it gone already? Did they not negotiate for price? Bro, they call up these investment firms and say, how much do you want for your house? You're asking $900 for this big, massive acreage property. And they'll be like, we'll give you $2 million. They'll give you $1 million over asking. How am I supposed to compete with that? I'm just trying to run a business. Now, my business is doing really, really well. What about regular working people? Nah, they ain't going to be able to do it. Check this out. This is a thread from Cultural Husbandry. I'm not familiar with Cultural Husbandry as a Twitter account, but this is a Twitter thread that's been going viral among many people. Thread. BlackRock is buying every single family house they can, paying 20 to 50% above asking price and outbidding normal home buyers. Why are corporations, pension funds, and property investment groups buying entire neighborhoods out from under the middle class? Let's take a look. Homes are popping up on MLS and going under contract within a few hours. BlackRock, among others, are buying up thousands of new homes and entire neighborhoods. So who's BlackRock? Only the world's largest asset manager and the leading proponent of the Great Reset. They're looking to redistribute, get this, $120 trillion, the entire wealth of the world's middle class and poor combined several times over. As an example, a 124 new home neighborhood was bought in its entirety in Texas. Average Americans were outbid to the tune of $32 million. Homes sold at an average of 20% above listing. Now the entire neighborhood is made up of SFRs. What are SFRs? Single family rentals. Now, your potential lower to middle class home owner is positioned to be a permanent renter. This matters because for the lower and middle class, owning a home is the most major part of any financial success and future upward mobility. When you pass on your generational wealth to your children, they get your home. I was looking at a home a few years ago. It was empty. And it was going for under market. They were just buy it. It was in the middle of nowhere in Maryland. And I asked them why it was being sold for below market. And they said, it's a brother and sister in their late 30s. Their parents died and they don't want the property and they don't want to deal with it. Okay. So they sell that property. They inherit it. They pay the tax on it. Sure, it's a death tax or something, however it works. But they score a quick couple $100K and they want the cash. They don't want the property. They inherit that money from their parents. Their parents build up wealth in their lives. And when they pass it on to their children. This is being stripped away. Your children will own nothing. You will own nothing. It is the Great Reset. Cultural goes on. This is wealth distribution, and it ain't rich people's wealth that's getting redistributed. It's normal American middle class, salt of the earth wealth heading into the hands of the world's most powerful entities and individuals, the traditional financial vehicle gone forever. Home equity is the main financial element that middle class families use to build wealth, and BlackRock, a Federal Reserve funded financial institution, is buying up all the houses to make sure that young families can't build wealth. That's right. Federal Reserve funded financial institute. Let that sink in for a minute. Got it? They're using your tax dollars to F over the lower and middle class, and it's permanent. Not one presidential administration of BS. This is a fundamental reorganization of society. So where does this position the average American in 30 years when it's given that every new neighborhood is to be bought up whole so they can be utilized as single family rentals? It positions them as peasants. Being poor can be temporary condition bettered by upward mobility. In the U.S. and other nations, home ownership is often the first and most vital step. This can provide for generational wealth and success. But as permanent guaranteed renters, you're pissing away a lifetime of equity and the chance for mobility. You just become a peasant. The Great Reset is real. It's happening. This will be the greatest transfer of wealth and the greatest consolidation of power in the history of mankind. If they get away with it, revolution will be the only cure. It will be awful. Wake up, get active, and stop this now. This is warfare, make no doubt about it. Lloyds Bank in London is doing it, as is every great financial institute across the world. This must be stopped. It is a greater threat than the slow creep of communism, BLM, or anything else you can think of combined. It is a death stroke. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street control $20 trillion worth of assets. BlackRock alone has a $10 billion a year surplus. That means with 5 to 20% down, they can get mortgages on 130 to 170K homes every year, or they can outright buy 30,000 homes per year, just BlackRock. Now imagine every major institute doing this because they are. It can be such a fast sweeping action that 30 years may be overshooting it. They may accomplish feudalism in 15. People will say they can't just piss away money on buying tens of thousands of houses that are all at a loss. Wrong. You and I can't do that. You and I can't do that. They are fronting the Federal Reserve and are financed by an endless stream of freshly created fiat money. And what's the global reserve currency? Oh, yeah, green funny money. You may ask, suppose the banks won't finance new housing, but companies are buying them from way above asking price. Can it last? Well, the banks are controlled by and in bed with the same cabal buying everything up. You think this will be corrected by market forces when it is financial and political pincer movement pushed by the same cabal that stole the... Well, I won't lead. I will read this next point, but preface, stole the 2020 election, and I will reference the Time magazine article, the Shadow Cabal and the Shadow Campaign, and what they refer to as a cabal of elites. I'm not suggesting fraud. These are the people that changed election laws. It is the Democrats and the Republicans. Cultural Husbandry then points out several articles that back up these claims, and I have many of them up, but there's other things that are happening here. CNBC.com. Soaring lumber prices add $36,000 to the cost of a new home, and a fierce land grab is only making it worse. April 30th. It's a couple months ago. The surge in lumber prices in the past year have added $35K to the price of an average new home. So there's a lot to think about. You can call it the Great Reset. I think it's a component of it. I think wealthy interests are ideologically driven. We can see the communist flag on Nickelodeon. Do you see this? Talked about it the other day. Nickelodeon runs this LGBT pride thing, and sure, fine, but then they show the red salute, and they tell children the communist salute is a good thing. So here's what happens. You're an investor. You're looking at a neighborhood, and you see a house going for $200K. You know that in order to build a new house due to the cost of lumber and steel prices, it's going to cost $40K more just to build. Which means a house that would normally be a new construction that would sell for maybe a little bit higher than the surrounding houses, like a new house. It's a lot better than a house that's 10 years old, right? So that 10-year-old house may be worth $200, the new build $250. And then you look at it and you go, yeah, but in order to actually build it now, they got to tack on $36K. Call it $4K with taxes, or $40K. So now that $250, let's just call it $300,000, $50K above. All right, I'll buy that $200,000 house because it has to go up in value too. If people want to move in the neighborhood, they got to pay a premium. These other houses are discounted right now. All of these major institutional investment firms realized we can buy up all these houses like crazy because people have no choice. Here's the other thing. Once you get to a certain level of wealth, you know you can control the market. I'll tell you a story about World of Warcraft. Now, I know people saying, I don't care about... No, hold on. This is fantastic. You're going to love this. Whether you play the game or not, you will love this. Way back in the day, in the early days of World of Warcraft, for those that aren't familiar, it's a massively popular MMORPG with millions of players who are interacting with each other. Now, you can choose to be a druid or a rogue and cast spells and fight dragons, but that's not relevant to the conversation. What is that there's something in-game called an auction house. And in the game, you can get materials for making new items or casting spells. To put it simply, there is an economy within World of Warcraft. Well, back in the day, many people, I'll just leave it at that, would go into the auction house and buy up all of one resource and then put it right back up at a 20% markup. It was insane. Demand was so hot for some of these items that so in order to enchant an item, you needed something called a small radiant shard. Meaningless, I know, ignore the jargon, but let me just explain. In this game, where there's no regulators, you could go in, and I kid you not, the World of Warcraft currency had real world value because people would buy it on, the black market, essentially. It was against the rules. But if you wanted to make a better character, you needed in-game currency, and you could spend US dollars against the rules to get it. Here's what people would do. They'd go into the auction house in-game, buy up all of the small radiant shard, repost it with a 20% markup because there was no regulation. People would then be complaining in chat, what is this? Why is it? Oh, man, it's ridiculous. And you would extract the gameplay hours of these players. Then you'd make all that gold for your character. You could sell it. People would. There was market manipulation in this video game without regulation. Now, I think about that back when I was, in my late teens, early 20s playing that game, laughing about the idea that you could manipulate the markets this way. And think about, and so I remember having these conversations with my friends, be like, you see what they're doing, how they scam this. It's not really a scam. It's not, you're allowed to do it. How does it apply to the real world? Here we are. These big investment firms know they can buy up all of the houses, all of them, and then just repost them back in the market at a higher rate. Why? Because people are going to take out loans from banks to pay for them anyway. Screw it. Let's buy 30,000 homes at 150 to 200K each, and then sell them for 200 to 250. And if they don't want to buy it too bad, we own them. Then they'll be permanent renters. Ultimately, I don't think they're going to resell them. I think they realize if they buy up every house, people will have no choice but to rent. And there we are. It's going to be like Ukraine. I was looking at Ukraine housing prices. There was a period where I was like, it seems like it might be a nice place to have an apartment, do work when covering conflict in the Middle East. It'd be great to have a hub to operate out of somewhere where it's cheap. The only issue, it wasn't. The houses and apartments were comparable to U.S. prices. And I'm like, how can the average Ukrainian afford this? That's right, they can't. The oligarchs own everything. You rent from them. It's feudalism. It will quite literally be lords. Now, it won't be on paper that they're lords, except we'll call them landlords. But this will be it. Congratulations to boomers. This is what you've done for your children. It's what you've created. Congratulations to millennials. It's what you are helping perpetuate. This is the failed policies of the current institutions. It's what you get when you support the establishment. Donald Trump wasn't perfect. In fact, there's a lot wrong with the guy, but he was an insurgent candidate and he was disruptive. Well, everybody voted for Biden and they have now sealed their fate. But I think a lot of the socialists are happy with this. It's part of the plan, I suppose. If you get everyone to be peasants, eventually you can have a peasant uprising. You can make it a lot easier to point to the ultra rich and be like, see, look at the wealth gap. I think they want the wealth gap to get worse. That way they can justify some kind of communist revolution. Now, it's not just lumber. It's not just all this. There's more. That's a wrong story. Job openings soar to record high 9.3 million, raising fears of labor shortage. Raising fears? It is a labor shortage. It is a labor shortage. People aren't going to own anything. You're not going to have the ability to buy a house. The government is going to give you money. They're going to print money and give it to you. And that means tain't nothing to buy. This is what I find really fascinating about these socialists and the UBI proponents. They don't understand the concept of supply and demand. When there's massive demand for things, that's not bad, so long as there's supply and they're sort of competing. But let's say you give everybody $1 million, right? I was thinking about that Mara Gay woman from the New York Times where she had that really stupid math flub where she was like, Bloomberg spent $500 million. He could have given $1 million to every American. It's like, what? It's like $1.70. What would have happened if you actually gave $1 million to every American? Well, there would be zero supply. Who would work? Everybody's like, I got $1 million. I don't got to work anymore. Then all of a sudden there's no food. There's no resources because people have to trade with each other to maintain an economy. If all of a sudden everybody had $1 million, $1 million would be worthless because you couldn't buy anything. That's what's happening. Let me just put it this way, because a lot of people might not understand. If you right now had $1 million, would you go back to work in the morning or would you be like, I'm going to pay off my bills, I'm going to go on vacation? You would not produce. Now on the left, they say, but it would create massive demand. Yeah, if some people had $1 million, if everybody did, nobody would need to do anything until it was too late and they needed to, and then inflation would skyrocket. This is where we're headed. How are you going to be able to buy a house? They're going to give you just enough so that you don't work, you don't save. You're getting barely enough to scrape by, and you will be a permanent renter. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. That's where we're headed, baby. The Wall Street Journal. If you sell a house these days, the buyer might be a pension fund. Meet your new landlord, Wall Street. So here it is. The institutions, the elites, the establishment, they will control and own everything. And you won't. You'll be a permanent renter. Like the World Economic Forum said, you will own nothing. If you want to go ride your bike, you'll rent it like City Bike. You want to go for a ride in a car, you'll call an Uber. The car will be owned by Uber and it'll be driven automatically. Now, I'm not entirely opposed to owning nothing. I think minimalism is fantastic. I think people too attached to things. Hey, men, don't be too attached to things, right? I think a lot of people need to get back to nature, find out what's fun and exciting and find passion and fulfill themselves, get away from the cities, get back to doing some hard work. There's nothing better than rolling up your sleeves and just doing some hard work. You know what I do in between segments? I'm not always reading the news. Sometimes I go out and feed the chickens. Got to clean up the coop a little bit, maybe water some of the plants. It's fun to go outside, catch some cicadas, throw them in the chicken coop. It's a wonderful thing. But too many people are obsessed by these Instagram influencers and how they look and what they want. It's like, just get back. Get away from all that stuff. Find some fulfillment in your life. So listen, I do think it's better that people do that, but I think it's better that we get there through a cultural effort, not through the force of the elite stripping away our wealth and our resources so that they can live in luxury. Otherwise, what's going to happen is in 30 years, we will live under lordship. There will be people permanently wealthy. We know they'll be permanently wealthy. There will be no upward mobility. You will be poor and you must accept it. And there will be police who will do whatever those lords say. My friends, we are building the Hunger Games. Welcome to the Great Reset. Let the odds be ever in your favor. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.